Greetings, innovators and leaders. This is AI for the C-Suite, your compass for navigating the exponential age. I'm your host, Chad Harvey, and we're here to bring you cutting-edge insights on AI tailored specifically for middle market organizations. Buckle up as we embark on a journey through the transformative world of artificial intelligence. Today, I am very pleased to be joined by Heather Murray, the founder and CEO of AI for Non-Techies, who's made it her mission to make AI accessible to everyone, no coding required. Heather's journey into AI began in an unexpected way. While running her marketing agency, she stumbled across an AI personality analysis tool that helped a client selling a high-value $10 million product achieve 6 sales in 9 months. That's compared to their usual sales cycle of 1 or 2 per year. That discovery sparked a complete pivot that's led to remarkable results. Today, Heather has generated over $75 million in revenue for clients using AI and works with major brands including Toyota, Mitsubishi, Google, and Salesforce. She serves as an AI consultant to the UK government and local authorities, sits on the ISO panel for AI and cybersecurity globally, and was recently named AI Trailblazer at the AI Revenue Summit 2024 and Top Women in SaaS 2024. She's regularly featured in Forbes Magazine and is also recognized as a top 5 MarTech influencer globally. What sets Heather apart is her ability to translate complex AI concepts into practical, actionable strategies for non-technical leaders. She speaks the language of business, not code, making her insights particularly valuable for middle market execs looking to harness AI's potential without getting lost in technical jargon. And that's why she's here today. Heather, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Thank you very much, Chad. You made me sound really good just then.
That's a big part of my job. But you made it easy. Very, very easy. So let's jump right in here. You are all about normalizing AI and using normal human language and demystifying this. And I know that you've said that when you explain AI to your audiences, it resonates most when you do use plain language and non-technical language. I think this is a great starting point for our conversation today because most business leaders, most CEOs, most owners that have been studying AI are not really technical in a background or technical experts. They might be technical subject experts in whatever their field is, but not with respect to computer science, IT, and AI. So what I've noticed out there, and I think you've seen the same, is that there's a great feeling of overwhelm. There is a lot of hesitation. There is a lot of concern about this, and it's quite daunting, quite frankly. So if I'm a CEO, if I'm an owner of a middle market company, and I do feel overwhelmed by the technical aspects, what is the first practical set of steps that I should start taking on Monday morning, say?
I think, there are a lot of people, and this is the main reason I got into it actually. There are a lot of people talking about how it works. And I think for a lot of us, how it works, how technology works is of no consequence. I use my mobile phone, my cell phone every day, my laptop. I have no idea how they work. I will never probably have any idea how they work. So I've used landlines all my life. So in the UK, we have these phones plugged in. I've no idea how they work either, but I use them all the time. So you don't need to know how something functions. Yet that is the way that a lot of people have been trying to explain generative AI. So they're talking about neural networks and large language models and generative pre-trained transformers and all of these things that just switch people off. And I think when I was sat there watching, in conferences, watching people explain it this way, you could actually see them just start to get distracted and look away. And that's when I kind of had the idea for AI for non-techies. But I think, it is such a huge thing. It's such a shift, bigger than anything most of us have seen technologically. It sort of dwarfs the internet when you start to get into what it can be used for and how it's going to change the way we behave just generally, not just inside of work, but outside of work too. So I generally think when depends on how you're looking at it. If you want to improve your own skills, I think as a leader, you get hands-on, you just open, you get a chatbot, you get your ChatGPT or your Copilot or your Gemini or whatever your weapon of choice is, and you just type into it. That's how I learned. You just have a conversation with it and learn and sort of give yourself prompting skills via experimentation. But if you're thinking about how to integrate it into your business, I have a kind of little framework that I use. It's called MICE, which is MEIS, not MICE, MEIS, which is very simple, as with everything I do, which is motivate, educate, integrate, sustain. So the motivation bit, you will have in your teams people at different levels and with very different feelings about this, and it's quite an emotive topic. So you will have the real enthusiasts who may be a little techie themselves or kind of techie leaning. It's probably like me. I'm not techie at all, but I'm a bit of a geek. So I really enjoy these types of things. I really enjoy learning about new things, and you enjoy futurism. And you'll have these people that are absorbing loads of information. They're your enthusiasts. You will have people who are angry, asking a lot of questions. They'll be focusing on the negatives, and there are a lot of negatives. There are a lot of ethical issues with generative AI. So they'll be leveraging those to say, no, I want to stop this from happening. And their kind of ideal outcome right now is to completely stop it or ignore it. You'll have the fearful, the people that are saying, why on earth would I embrace a technology that could possibly make me redundant? And there's many other different types, but it'd be mainly those kind of three types of people, or just the overwhelmed, I think is probably a fourth type, who are saying, yes, I get it. I know I need to wrap my head around this, but if it's going to integrate in everything in my work and everything in my life, what is the first step? So I think that M for motivate is bringing all the people together to help the people who are scared understand that AI is not here to take their jobs. It does not have that capability yet, if we're truly honest. It can do little bits and pieces quite interestingly, and it can really surprise you, but it certainly can't take the role of a human. And showing the limitations to people who are scared is a really good way to reassure them. For those enthusiasts, it's showing them more use cases, helping to sort of wrangle all that energy and put it into a place which is really productive where they can inspire others. For the skeptics, it's agreeing with them, acknowledging the ethical issues, showing them how this has happened with other technologies as well in the past. All technology goes through the hype cycle and adoption curve, and this is not a new thing. That this resistance is actually characteristic of how we adopt technology, and kind of just speaking to them and listening to their worries and thoughts. So there are different ways to approach different people, but getting them all on a level to begin with, that's how I would consider motivation. When you've got them on that level, then you're going to show them real use cases in their industry, show them action, show them results if you can as well, and you can build that excitement and that energy. The next one, which is the E in MICE, is educate, and that is where you're going to equip people with the core skills that they need in order to do a good job. And that's not about specific use cases yet. That's about learning how to prompt properly. That's about how to build an AI assistant, which is much easier than it sounds. It's about learning how to use tools safely. If you're in a smaller business, how to select tools safely. All of the ethical, the risks, the limitations, all of that side of things, and starting to build workflows. Then we have the I, which is integrate. So that is when you're going to apply your education, your new core skills to real scenarios. So you're going to match up problems and blockers in your everyday working life to these skills. So what problems can these new skills solve? And then the S is sustain. So how can you keep yourself up to date? How can you make sure that you are following all the changes? Staying safe as well is a really huge part of that. How can you make sure your policies and your governance are all done very well? And how can you sustain also that energy for it? Because this is not going to stay in one line. It's going to grow and grow and become more and more integrated. So how do you keep listening to people? How do you keep time boxing? Experimentation time for people as well. So that kind of MEIS is how I generally advise people into where to start and where to lean in a very broad way.
Which one of those, I have my suspicions here, so I'm asking a semi-loaded question that I already have an answer to in the back of my head, but out of those 4 levels in MICE, which one do you find is the greatest sticking point with organizations when you're working with them?
I would say the integration bit. So when they actually get to see ROI, that's the bit their ears prick up at when they listen. They go, okay. But you can't do any of it without the rest. Unless people are on a level, they're not really interested in the sustain bit. They're kind of, oh, that's just faffy. The educate bit, they're like, oh yeah, but can we just jump straight in? That people regularly expect that they will have one day of training and then they will start seeing ROI off the back of that. And it's much, much bigger than that, I'm afraid. You can get quick wins, which are exciting. Save yourself 10, 15 minutes a day. You can do that in an hour. But to get full transformation, to start seeing the needle really, really move across your organization, then it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. And it's very interesting to me when we talk about the long-term changes to the way people are able to do their jobs, and we overlay that with the additional capabilities that are constantly coming out with these tools. And one of the ways that I think about this is when I go in to use Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint or something like that, I am generally not looking at whatever the updates are. I'm not looking for the new whatever that Microsoft has pushed out. And I think that that is especially acute with these AI tools, because if you don't know to look, number one, or you're more concerned, rightfully so, with getting your day job done, using the tool in the way that you were trained and the use cases that have already iterated, I'm not sure that there's a lot of room left there for experimentation for most line level and middle level employees. So how do you find that you're able to inculcate that sense of discovery and exploration on an ongoing basis in an organization? Because I think that's going to be really key to leveraging these tools going forward.
Yeah, it's a real mindset shift. It's totally different. And like you say, unless you are a techie type, you won't be looking for updates. We constantly on our phones. I feel every time I look at my iPhone in the morning, it's got a new update. I've no idea what that means. Has that created something new? When you occasionally see a new button, I don't get excited about it. I do with AI tools. But with your laptops, all of those sorts of things, they're constantly being updated. Like you say, Microsoft Word constantly has updates. There's new things going on all the time to keep it ticking along. But yeah, it's a real change, and I think you need to kind of build energy for that. And so having those quick wins early and showing people that they can have those wins, but also showing the effect it can have on your role in that it can remove bits that you don't like so you can spend more time doing the bits that you do. That's motivating for a lot of people. Like, your job can be more enjoyable. So the more enjoyable it is, the more likely you're going to go and seek those updates and start to think, oh, okay, this is something worth spending time on. But also from the top down, and the people that we're speaking to on this podcast, it's dedicating time. It's making sure that there is paid time. That some marketing agencies that I've been working with that are probably some of the furthest ahead when it comes to seeing results. They have quite literally got Fridays. They've given an entire day. Canva have just recently given an entire week to their employees, paid week, where they're all going to try loads of different tools and really, really get into AI, an entire week, which I think is a bit extreme, but really exciting to see that they've made that decision. But yeah, I'm seeing regular people, if it's a half day, a couple of hours a week, a full day, but they are setting aside time wherein people have secure tools and they have challenges and missions and quizzes, and they're gamifying it and making it interesting and exciting. And the biggest reward is your job being more exciting or easier, or the ability to do things in a completely different way as well. So it's refreshing people who might have been there for a while too.
Let's lean into that a little bit, and let's talk about doing things in a completely different way, but let's assign a dollar value to it. You talked about quick wins a moment ago, and I know that you've had quick wins with clients, and you've also had some substantial, what I would call needle moving, with real ROI. So do you have any good examples of a quick win, and also example of a larger return on investment with clients that you've worked with? Because I'd like people to understand what's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can show you the example of the energy company that you mentioned in the introduction as well. That's probably a really good example of probably one of the best wins I've seen. But a small win, I see them daily every time, and I think probably the most common small win is an AI note taker. So everybody, a lot of jobs have many online meetings. And you now have the ability to record them and have every single detail recorded. So whether that's a sales call, an onboarding call, just in internal calls, you can now get so much more value out of that same hour. So I, for example, use an AI note taker with every call that I'm in. And I use the transcript to create proposals. So I use the AI note taker. I run it through an AI assistant that I've built. Again, sounds technical, is not technical. If I can do it, anybody can. And that creates proposals. This assistant knows my pricing. It knows how I'd normally approach a topic. It knows the training offers that we have, the multiple different versions of them. And it will write a proposal in exactly the right structure for me. That saves me. That takes a 4 hour job potentially down to around about a 1 hour job, including me checking it. That is a magic quick win for me, particularly as I'm a founder of a small company with fast growing. Every hour counts, of course. I mean, every hour counts for everybody. But then on the flip side, the bigger one, I always have to refer to this one, so I think it's fantastic. Is the so they came to me with an energy company came to me with a $10 million product. It was a battery optimization product, and there's only 40 companies in the whole world that it's relevant for and that could afford it. And they had a list of job titles there, and they came to my marketing agency. It was before was it in the AI, and they said, "Look, we're knocking on these doors and nobody's answering. We know who we want to speak to. We know the companies we're speaking. We want the companies that they work at, but we can't get them. We can't get them on a call. When we get them on a call, we tend to convert, but it's very, very hard to get them given our price and given where we are. And they're a big brand." So I said, I assume you're analysing as much as you possibly can about these individuals. And it turned out they weren't. They were analysing only job titles, industry pain points, company pain points, kind of very generic stuff. There was nothing about that person specifically. So things they'd attended, topics they talk about. And that was my initial point, was manually to go, right, let's dig into them. Let's see what have they done? What is their presence online? And while I was looking for that, and while I was looking for new ways to do that, I stumbled across a tool. I didn't even realize it was AI at the time. It's called Crystal. And it's still around now, actually, but there are now newer versions of that same tool that do the same thing. And what that did was it pulled up they called it digital breadcrumbs. So basically, all these little parts are that you leave on the internet, mostly LinkedIn. Actually, you'd be surprised by how much information people can get from what you like. There was an experiment. I can't remember who did the experiment. I always talk about this. I need to look it back up. But somebody did an experiment where they deduced people's personalities based purely on which posts they liked on Facebook. No comments, no posts, just their likes. And the accuracy was incredible. It was actually the founder of Humantic that told me this story. And Humantic are one of the new competitors for Crystal, actually. And so it's really interesting to get this information, and you can analyze these people individually now. So it's completely new data, and the accuracy was wonderful. We got these personality profiles. So at the time, we didn't have ChatGPT or Claude. This was one tiny AI piece in a very manual puzzle. So I had my copywriters, my editors, my researchers, all still doing what they do, but in the middle we had this extra bucket of information, and that was this personality profile. So we would write outreach lead magnets, try to attract their attention. But the change that we made was we added this personality profile in. So AI helped us know whether we should put a comma after their name, whether we should put hi or hello, whether we should do a 1-line message or a 5-line message, what type of language to use, perspective to use. It was that detailed, and the results were absolutely incredible. So yeah, they didn't have the sales team to deal with the work that we brought in. So yeah, it was incredible. Microsoft at the time said this is the most intelligent version of this type of campaign we've seen, which was huge for a tiny agency like ours as well. So we did that again. We did it again with a 100K product, because we thought we're not going to have too many $10 million products. So we did it with a 100K product and it worked. We did it with a 10K product and it worked, but not as well. So we were thinking anywhere between 100K and 10 million, which is most products really. You can it works really well, and I'm about to test it with a much lower end product as well. That's just 1,500 to see if it will work at scale. But now we have all of these different tools that we can do the entire workflow. So where I had humans here, I was talking about not replacing humans in certain workflows, yeah, but not entire jobs. But now we have Claude that can do the copywriting and the editing. We have any deep research function. So if you'll notice on your chatbots, I always explain everything simply. So if I'm explaining it too simply, that's why. But if you go into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or Copilot, they all have this version of a research tool. You click on the research button, or you drop down to deep research mode, and we're able to do research now in 10 minutes that would normally take hours and maybe even days, the amount of detail they go into. So that entire process could now be almost fully automated and AI generated as well, which is very exciting.
Yes, it is. I personally really enjoy running a deep research set in one tool, running the same prompt for the deep research set in another tool, and then using a third tool to analyze spot consistencies or areas of variance and get to a kind of a single version of truth. So there are a lot of ways to use this. I think the other thing, and you kind of alluded to this, is model switching within one of the different tools, because folks, I don't believe, have a full appreciation of what not just the deep research features are enabling, but also some of the more deliberate thinking models that are out there. When you switch into like an O3 model in ChatGPT, you get very different results than when you use the standard models. So very good points that you made. The other thing I think folks don't understand is that there's oftentimes an ability to use the transcription and recording tools offline. If you're using some of them like Otter or Crisp or Fathom, most of them have applications that sit on your phone, and you can use them in the real world meetings to the same effect. I think that I'm glad that you had started with those note takers. So very good points. You also talked at the end of your answer there about humans. So let's talk about humans a little bit more. I know that the idea of creating internal AI talent for training purposes is really a hot button for you in a good way. And I want you to expand on that and talk to us about what your views are, why this is critical, what building that internal capability and capacity might look like. Just talk to us about that internal AI talent and kind of that train the trainer model that you were alluding to in our prior conversation.
Yeah, I think when I was talking through that mice model before, you can bring in really good people to motivate and show you what's possible. I think it has to be external. I think unless you have somebody particularly special in your organization, I think that person would need to be external. And then educating, learning about those core skills. But nobody can apply those skills better. I feel it every time I go into many organizations, and it's all about the conversations I'm having with them and them understanding once they know what AI can do, then they can apply it themselves. And I think it's very, very important that people understand, that leaders understand that this is not something that's a one and done situation at all. This is going to continue to change. You can prepare yourself with those core skills and be ready for each layer of change, and it can feel manageable. But you definitely need to start thinking about training your own in-house talent. Absolutely. I think it's really important. It's something my business has started to offer, because I just felt it in the rooms. I was thinking, right, I can take you so far, but I'm going to need. It started off by with champions, but those champions needed power, they needed time, they needed structure. So I think having people internally who understand exactly what your problems and what your blockers are, who understand how to speak to the IT team to get tools approved properly. That's always a big blocker that happens quite a lot. That the role of decision making when it comes to tools is down to IT. It doesn't necessarily mean that they understand generative AI. They may understand all the other types of AI, which have been around since the 50s, but they may not actually understand generative AI yet. So they're holding it into themselves until they do it. So a person internally can have much more delicate conversations that way as well, and can bypass something that an external trainer just will come up against a brick wall with as well. So I think definitely starting to think about, right, who are these people that have that natural level of interest? It could be your existing trainers, reskilling them. It could be AI people who are acting as AI champions. It could be a lot of people are having AI leads, chief AI officers, even in the business as well. You need to start to structure your own programs. Somebody who's going to be exploring what the competition's doing, what your industry is doing as well, and have that as a dedicated role. I think that's probably one of the best things you could be doing right now.
It's so interesting when I have these conversations. For decades, at least in the United States and North America, we've been focused on training specialists. Yet the skill sets that you're describing here in terms of what's the ideal candidate to be that champion, that trainer for an organization, is a much more of a generalist. You talked about a number of cross-cutting areas. You kind of touched on marketing and sales, customer understanding, the ability to work internally, the ability to have a good presence and train folks. These are not single set skills, where we've been focused. And I wonder to what extent you see the future of work as less of specialist buckets and more generalists as we embrace these tools.
I think there's a little bit of both, isn't there? I think You've got, yeah, from the trainers' perspectives, and certainly people who could be a management level can manage a lot more if they've got a lot less to do themselves for sure. But I do think there's sort of, for example, in creative departments, I think there's going to be some real specialists that have. I'll give the work will flip, workflows will completely change. So I can only kind of speak for areas that I kind of know about, but things like the role of a copywriter, a really good copywriter, the AI cannot match up to a good copywriter in the same way AI cannot match up to a good designer yet. That's where we are right now. I don't know whether I can see it anytime soon because it's that understanding of other humans, that real world experience, that empathy that AI can't possibly have. It may learn to emulate it effectively enough. I'm not sure. But I think that's going to be that very, very specialist role of I'm going to add the human bit to this. I'm going to be the person that adds the magic. So you've given me all this research and this data, and it's all ready for me and it's organized for me, and I can work in this really nice, fluent way, but I'm still going to specialize in this area. I can see that happening too. But yeah, I think we'll all be able to do more. Everybody be able to do more. And that itself is a question that a lot of people have noticed. And I've noticed myself, I'm freeing up all this time, and what am I doing with it? More work. So is what's the point in any of it? Apart from the fact, my own business has grown 566% in the last sort of 14 months, which has been huge. And it's accelerating. That would not have been possible without AI. But I need to obviously be careful of burnout myself a little bit because I just fill up those hours with more work. I think a lot of people will.
Yeah. Do you find that you fill up your hours when you say more work? Is it a higher volume of the same type of work, or do you find that you're able to evolve the work and move to different levels of work?
Not yet, if I'm being honest. I think a lot of the time is still experimenting. Even as somebody who's been completely immersed in this for a couple of years now, I'm still trying to figure out capabilities. I'm still trying, like you say, I really loved what you said about the looking at two different research results and using another AI to do that. I love playing around. So time boxing that experimentation time for myself. That's where I'm spending the spare time. So long term, I think that's going to have a huge impact on my business. It's definitely worth that investment of time, but I'm not yet seeing that kind of, I can, unless you could take, and I've got a really good example actually. I was in a webinar this afternoon, and I had my AI note taker in the webinar recording everything. So, and it was such a good discussion. I was thinking, wow, there's so many content ideas in this, and so much food for thought. But at the same time, I still have my pen and paper. And I was able to listen in a way that I can't normally listen when there's so much going on. It would be a struggle to focus with the chat going on. The chat was really lively. The other speakers were saying some really fantastic things. But because I didn't have to think about the details or have to think, I have to remember that at the same time, I was able to come up with some really good points live with my pen and paper. So that showed a totally different way to approach the same situation. I couldn't have thought more as clearly as I did if AI hadn't been there in that part. So maybe that's a good example.
No, I think that's a fantastic example. And I remember, I'm old enough, I have enough gray hairs to remember the rise of Google and search and the lament, particularly of educators, but also of parents about children not remembering dates and facts and things like that. And I think our entire relationship with information has changed over the last 20 some years. And what you're talking about here is really the next evolution of that change in the real world. It is no longer just, do I need to remember the date of the Battle of Hastings or when the Magna Carta was signed, right? That's all table stakes stuff. And similarly, the facts and the details of a meeting in your example, I think are now table stakes. It's being able to step back, understand that that information is captured in real time. I can refer to it any way I want. I can use it in a variety of ways. And how does that free me up to think more strategically about what's actually happening in real time in front of me? So I think your point is very well made, Heather.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and I'm being really interested to see how that evolves, definitely, and how it frees up space. It does, I think, conversely though, I have noticed myself just trying to deliberately do sort of more human things to try to think. I think it's really worried me when a lot of people are saying, is it making us dumber? Are we outsourcing our thinking? I have noticed sometimes I can't work something out. I instantly go, before I even try to have that thought, I will instantly move over to AI, and I'm trying to break that pattern. But then I found myself doing, it sounds strange, but I'm doing more jigsaws. I'm writing more poems, a bit more of a creative type, but I haven't written poems in years. But I'm finding myself doing that. And I don't know if that's in response to having slightly more thinking time, or me being worried about dumbing myself down by using AI too much. I think it's been really interesting to see that behavior, almost observe that behavior in myself. And yeah, I think it's the same thing as that screen free. We become conscious of something, we try to go out into nature more, and yeah, it's a bit of a sad thought, but it's something I think we need to all be conscious about and not relying on it too much. I think there's a real worry about using AI to cheat through things and not ever actually think anything through.
Hmm. No, I agree. Every time we've had, and you alluded to this in your opening comments, every time we've had a new technology come along, it substantially changes things if it's a general purpose technology. And I think about the evolution, even the automobile is a good example. You go back 40, 50 years, even 25 or 30 years, and you had a lot of part-time shade tree mechanics, right? You had the dads that would work on their cars on the weekends. You'd have a lot of that type of stuff. You don't really have that anymore because the vehicles have evolved to the point not only where it's more difficult to work on them, but also they break down much less. They are much more reliable. So it's kind of an evolution and a perfection of that art form. And I view AI in the same way. So when you're talking about how we think, is it making us dumber? Is it making us easier to cheat? I go right to the idea of metacognition and thinking about how we think. And I know this is a little high-minded, but where you're honing in on here, I think, is the way that we are approaching problems and how we're using our brains. And my hope is that as more and more of these tools evolve, it's taking a lot of the lower level cognitive load off of us and allowing us that white space, like you said, to think in different ways, to do jigsaw puzzles, to do other things, and evolve the way that we think. Now, the flip side of that is if you're lazy, you're always going to be lazy. And there's no amount of AI or non-AI that's going to change that, I think.
I think I thought exactly the same thing. I think we're splitting into these lazy AI users and the people who are very consciously using it. And I have thought exactly that thought. Lazy people are always going to be there's always going to be people that use a new technology to cheat, and there's nothing really that can stop that. But I think some people thought, when the calculator came in, that's cheating, or when the dishwasher came in, that's not doing it properly. It's the same for all of these things, isn't it? But also, and when it comes to job displacement as well, I always like to say, well, the first job I did doesn't exist anymore. I used to be an audio secretary, so I would listen to court cases and I would type them out, and I actually really enjoyed that job. It was something very calming about listening to it, apart from when it was a bad court case. That was very distressing then. But I would just type them out. So I would get these tiny little tapes from the lawyers and a big paper file. And that was my day. I came into the office, I took my file, I listened to the tape, I typed it out, and then pass over the results at the end of the day. That job doesn't exist anymore. But at that time, social media didn't exist. So there was no Facebook, there was nothing like that. And then when that came into play, there's a whole other world of jobs existed as well. So when people go, this technology is going to take my job, and well, technology already took my job way before AI. So, and it will just continue to happen like that. It always has.
Well, it will. And you also bring up a really good point when you give the example of the first job that you had. I think people in general, especially when they're first entering the workforce, unless they're already pre-wired to be an entrepreneur, most folks want reliability, dependability. They want something they can do that is repeatable, that they don't generally have to think about too much, at least for the first year or two. And I feel like a lot of those types of jobs are going away. They are evolving into something different. And I think this goes right back to our conversation about critical thinking. How are you going to be able to lean into this, understanding that that typist or transcription type job example that you gave is no longer there, right? Yeah, I think about that in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think also certain neurodiverse people as well. Some people really that is the type of job that suits them perfectly. That repetitive job, I remember we had people with different needs, different mental health needs, working in our post room when at law firm that I worked at, and it was a very simple job. And these people really, really enjoy. They've got a lot of satisfaction from the organisation, from the fact it was a physical job where you take the piece of say post mail and hand it out to people, and that was perfect. You have all sorts of different jobs that suit different types of brain. And so I worry about that particularly if we're getting rid of all of those jobs, absolutely. And then you've also got things like the role of a paralegal, for instance, that is very much under threat. I can't see much of a need for what they do. But how on earth are you going to get from being qualifying to actually being a lawyer without having, any experience? All of these kind of junior roles that where you do the repetitive stuff, but that is critically important to learning those life skills and being actually in that right area. We can't get rid of that bit because we're going to have some really terrible inexperienced people in roles that they shouldn't be in. So that's got to be thought about as well.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that goes then to a subject that I wanted to ask you about. So we're talking about transformation of jobs and of humans, but the real play here is for the transformation of work and for organizations. And I know that from my experience, and I'd be interested in yours as well, most of the clients that I work with or the companies that I get calls from, at best, they are in the first stages of automation. So I think about it in three ways. I think about augmentation. So we're augmenting existing work. We're automating then, a kind of a second level. We're automating work that previously was done by a human. And then the third stage is what I think of as acceleration. Some people call it transformation. And it's really doing novel things. It is changing the nature of the way the organization actually functions. And I'd be interested in your experience and your insight about where most clients are and where potential clients are when you meet them. Are they still in the augmentation phase? Are they on automation? Because I doubt that many of them are in the transformation stage of the journey or the accelerative stage, as I think of it. So what's your observation? Yeah.
I really like those three stages. That's really interesting. I think I would say, and it keeps on surprising me, particularly with enterprises that they're at the very, very, very beginning of what was the first one? Sorry, augmentation. Yes, so they're at the very beginning of that. I would say, particularly with generative AI specifically, yes. So they're just starting off. I would say 95% of the people that I work with are in that phase. They don't trust it yet enough to allow it to automate, and they're not aware enough of its capabilities. The more advanced people that I work with are in automate. Yeah, they're just moving from augmentation into automation and into workflows. So they understand its capabilities, and now they're trying to find use cases and to make those use cases as simple to run as possible. So just at the early stages, but I think there's that whole other world to go. And I get really excited about that acceleration phase as well, and try to throughout all of this thinking about how could I completely scrap and stop how I think about something and think about it entirely differently, like that data I was talking about before, like those digital breadcrumbs. Prior to AI, we didn't have an ability to analyze people's personality types and word preferences in that way before. It's a whole new stream of data. So what can we do with that now? So I think there's endless new things we can do that are really exciting. I think one of them, the simplest one I find when I work with people who work in human resources, in people, is policies. So when you join a new organization, you get given things to read, don't you? You get emailed your health and safety policy, your onboarding, all of these things. And if we're all honest with ourselves, we don't read them. We don't read them. We say we do, we tick the box, everybody's happy, but they know that we haven't read them. We know we haven't read them. But now we can interact very easily. We can create interactive policies. And I mean, as in, I could show you in 10 minutes how to create an interactive policy. So people can now they can listen to the policy if they learn that way. They can listen to a really nice podcast of it. Again, 2 minutes to make. They can ask questions. They can interact with it. That policy is now an actual useful active document as opposed to a completely ignored static document. The same with sort of financial information. I found a really good example, which was excellent, using Notebook LM, one of Google's tools. And that was a finance team within the government here that I work with. They said every Friday we send out this report. It's got spreadsheets, it's all of the numbers, and we know nobody reads it, but we send it out anyway. And now what they send out is a podcast, a 2-minute podcast, giving an overview of that week's numbers. And now people listen to it. So that information is no longer ignored. That's exciting. So when we talk about new ways of doing things, it doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. It can be the way that we absorb information ever so slightly changing and making things more accessible and more engaging so they actually function.
You've touched on something that most leaders don't want to talk about, but we're going to talk about it right now. It's not like an elephant in the room, but it's one of those, oh, here we go again. It's the issue of the information and the quality of the information. If I was going to put on my consultant tech speak hat, data readiness, right? And I am sure you've seen what I see, which is most organizations have massive gaps in both their data and their processes. And in order to leverage and to take advantage of a lot of what you're talking about, you've got to have good handle on and good quality data flows and data warehouses or data structures. So let's say I'm I'm a 15 or 20-year-old company. I've got, let's just call it what it is, poorly organized data, because that's the way it goes. You grow organically as a small business into a medium-sized, and pretty soon you're sitting on 30 different stacks of data and you have no idea what the quality is. This is who I am. How am I going to get AI ready?
It's a big question, and one I don't have an answer to actually. I think you can start. I only think of things.
No, help me, Heather. Help me.
Tell me exactly what to do. No, I think, I mean, one of the very first things you can do is things like naming conventions of your files. So just, communication around what you should name your files, and that can start from when you're very small. And that's something I'm starting myself now, actually, because you're right, AI amplifies the data that you've got. It's only as good as what you give it. And also, although this AI can understand what we're saying technically, it understands us better when we talk in a certain way, when we prompt in a certain way, but also when documents are structured in a certain way too. So it will understand, for example, a spreadsheet where the column headings are in row one. So that type of thing makes a huge difference as to how it can understand. It will understand a document if it's properly formatted with H1s and H2s and H3s, and everything is in a way that it can understand and see. It will totally understand that document much better than if it's just messy. And I think that's a really important thing that you could just start doing straight away, is naming conventions, making sure that everything's neat and tidy and up to date. So much old information. There's so many different versions. Nobody knows which version is the latest one. That's a really important thing. And like you say, gaps. The amount of times I've been building AI assistants with companies and say, right, okay, can you provide me with this? And nobody knows where it is. And these are multi-billion-dollar organizations. People can't. It happened today. I won't name names, of course, but I said, could somebody upload the tone of voice document? There were marketers in the room. Nobody knew where it was. Like, we'll be able to find it, but we don't know where it is. And that to me is a fundamental marketing document, and it should be something that's being reviewed regularly. So it really does bring to light, good data health. Yeah.
You just surfaced a tone of voice concept. Let's talk about that for a second, because I think that tone of voice, brand books, those are increasingly important for organizations that want to have non-generic outputs when they're using these different tools. Can you speak to that a little bit? What are you advising clients on? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so I think what's becoming very obvious, and as somebody who was both a copywriter and ran a copywriting agency for 5 years, I'm very familiar with poor tone of voice guides. I think many of them are generic. They use the same words. We want to sound friendly, helpful, professional, human. They love to say, even before AI, they love to say human.
That's like having integrity as a core value, right?
Yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah.
Table stakes, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I think a lot of them, when fed to a human, they will use their nose. They won't use that piece of paper that you've given them. They'll use the interview, the conversation, the onboarding that you had to deduce what tone of voice you actually want. Because everybody wants to sound like MailChimp or Coca-Cola or Apple. Everybody says exactly the same thing, and so you'd all get the same results that you'd be very unhappy with. So that document doesn't really work. Now you're going to remove the human nuance out of it, that ability for them to kind of go, oh, they what they really mean is this. It's not in the document what they really mean. That's not there anymore if you're using AI. So you need to get much better, proper tone of voice guides. But the good news is AI can help you with that too. So you can ask it to act as an expert in writing tone of voice guides and feed it with examples of what you mean. So and it doesn't have to be your brand. Most brands' tone of voice is mixed and all over the place. But find examples of tone of voice that you want, feed them in as many as you possibly can, and say, write me a tone of voice guide that reflects this tone of voice. Then you get something that the AI will understand, as opposed to a human trying to communicate it, which they can't do very well.
Let me ask you this, because you've just opened the door, and I know that you're interested in hyper-personalized marketing and customer experience. And I'm wondering, how do we reconcile a hyper-personalized marketing customer experience future against the tone of voice that we desire as an organization when we're using these different tools? I don't know. Does that make sense, my question?
It does, yeah. You kind of have to find a balance between the two, because if you're saying we always greet people in this same way, and then the hyper personalization information is saying we don't use a greeting, that's going to jar. I think, yeah, you'll need to include a kind of weighting, so that I think the personalization is more important than your impression of what they might want to hear. It's the data is stronger with the personalized stuff. So if the person data says don't greet and the tone of voice guide says greet, I would be not greeting, for example. I think, yeah, so you'd need to factor that into your tone of voice guide as well. So this is where how you weight the personalization information that we also have. So yeah, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. It's a good point.
It is. I often wonder whether we're headed into an era where we're all going to have our own personal digital assistants that understand how we want to be communicated with and spoken to, what works for us, what doesn't work, and whether it's a meeting or a medical appointment or whatever, there's almost a pre-conversation between our assistant and the other digital assistant on behalf of the entity that gets that stuff squared away before we even walk in the door, be it virtual or real. I see inklings of that when you talk about, and we haven't talked about this, but when you look at how ChatGPT personalizes its responses to you based on what it knows about you and what you fed it and told it. And it feels to me like we're just kind of scratching the surface on that. So I don't know where we go with that, but I see inklings.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean, but it's exactly what humans are doing now. It's what my PA does. She reads my emails for me. She knows the context. She looks at everything. She tells me just what I need to know, none of the rest. And if it's something I don't need to know, it will be taken care of. And I think that's, yeah, indeed what, obviously, I don't think AI, and this is something I really think, when people say, oh, we'll all have AI assistants, we won't need, there's no way that the level of human empathy and understanding and diplomacy that you need to have to be a PA or an EA that is a job that is, I think, is completely safe from AI. They'll be using tools, but you certainly can't to understand that. Oh, she sounds a little bit like this, so let's make sure that this meeting is moved over there. AI will not get that level of nuance at all for a very long time, at least.
Very true. All right. I know that we're about to run short on time here, so just one or two more questions as we wrap things up in the true spirit of always leave them wanting more. Maybe we can do a part two at another time.
Yeah, sure.
I know that you work with a wide variety of organizations, major brands, government entities. What is the biggest mindset shift that you see the people that are successful with AI and leaders that are adopting AI in their organizations? What's the biggest mindset shift that you see that they're making?
I would say the most inspiring one, and the one that seems to be really moving most, is actually in the public sector here in the UK. And it was the CEO himself was talking vulnerably about his own experiences, and the effects that had on the people around him, the other senior leaders, and the team in this 4,000 strong organization. Is remarkable. Everybody's moving forward because he has been open about what's happened, and how he feels, and that he is scared of this, and he is, he's speaking in a human way about this thing that is the most anti-human thing ever, or it feels like it. So I think that kind of that openness, not vulnerability, sorry, openness, and discussion and conversation, I think is absolutely critical, definitely. And seeing it, and linked to that is seeing it as a people first, technology second. That there is so much emotion tied up in all of this, and it's about the amplifying the abilities of humans, reassuring them, equipping them, making their lives better. If you're putting that as at the forefront of your decision making and your communication, I think things will move forward a lot better when people do that. So yeah, openness and that kind of human people first sort of approach.
No, that is a great final point. One final question for you. There are an awful lot of people that are still paralyzed. They're on the sidelines. What's one piece of advice that you would give them, other than start playing with it, right? What's one piece of advice that you would give them to start moving the ball forward if they feel they're already behind, or if they have just got this approach avoidance mentality?
Just try to master one tool. Just think. There is so much you can do with one chatbot. So ChatGPT, $20 a month. Like, it's worth getting the paid. I know that it seems like a lot when you don't know what it can do, but when you do know what it can do, after about 2 weeks, you'll think, wow, this is trust me when you give it a go. And I know that I'm probably giving that same advice you said without saying just give it a go. I'm saying exactly the same thing, but maximizing one tool, I think is really important. You could do so much with just ChatGPT. It has so many different features and functions. It can analyze data. You can speak to it and have a conversation. You can simulate difficult conversations. You can upskill yourself, learn new languages. You can build your own assistants. You can do deep research. You can think through really complex problems, like you have a kind of co-founder, co-CEO, a board, whatever it is that you'd like to do. You can do so much with one tool. So go all in on one of those, I think. And yeah, and I suppose just try not to be overwhelmed. I would avoid trying to learn everything at the very beginning. Avoid trying to follow everything or trying to stay ahead, because trust me, that is my full-time job. It is impossible. You can't. And focus on your specific industry. It feels a lot less overwhelming when you're looking at just your industry, or even just your kind of your company size within your industry as well, and see what other people are doing, because it's a lot less than you think. I start all of my sessions with where are you on the scale, if you're really honest with yourself, and trust me, everybody else is there too. So kind of stop feeling behind. You're not behind. If you're listening to this podcast, and you're a lot further ahead than a lot of people, but just put one foot in front of the other and take that first step. I'd recommend.
Those are two brilliant pieces of advice, and I'm so glad that you talked about going deep, because I can't tell you how many people reach out to me. They're like, do you know about this tool? Have you tried this tool? Are you using this? I'm like, well, hold on. We have barely scratched the surface on what these main frontier models can do. Let's go a little bit deeper first. So wonderful advice. I appreciate it. For our listeners that want to learn more about you, more about your work, get in touch. What is the best way for them to do that, Heather?
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch with me is via my LinkedIn. If you find me, I'm Heather Murray from AI for Non-Techies on LinkedIn. Drop me a message and I can tell you about all the things that we do. But what we do, we have an AI Academy that is for individuals. We train teams as well, but we also do that train the trainer program I was referring to as well, so we can help you train your own in-house talent.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation today. This was just wonderful.
Yeah, it was really lovely to meet to speak to you, Chad. I really enjoyed our conversation as well. Thank you.
You bet. And for our listeners, thank you for once again tuning into AI for the C-Suite, where we're committed to helping middle market leaders thrive in the exponential age. If you found value in today's discussion, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on all the socials, and visit our site, aiforthecsuite.com. Join us next time as we continue to unlock the potential of AI for your organization. And until then, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check. Take care, everybody.